Days passed after the first attack, and the palace of Elithra worked tirelessly to recover. Ethan moved among the staff, offering suggestions to improve defenses and streamline communication between sectors. His human ways, simple, logical, and practical, often baffled Elithran officials but produced results that could not be ignored. Leora stayed close, observing, learning, and sharing in his successes. Her admiration for him grew, but so did her awareness that the coming days would demand more than intellect and courage. They would require trust and bravery in ways neither of them had yet experienced. Despite the repairs, warnings continued. Scouts detected a larger fleet approaching from the outer system. This time, the threat was not a single attack but an invasion, a calculated strike meant to seize Elithra's resources and power. The Queen called an emergency council meeting and all eyes turned to Ethan. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the rising tension around him. "We need unconventional strategies," Ethan said. "The enemy expects standard defense. If we act predictably, we will be overwhelmed. We must use Elithra itself as a weapon. The environment, the terrain, and the weaknesses in their fleet, all of these can be turned to our advantage." The Elithran officers exchanged doubtful glances. One said cautiously, "You are human. How can you command the defenses of our planet?" Ethan looked at him without fear. "I am not commanding. I am observing and suggesting. You have the technology and the strength. I only offer perspective. The results depend on your courage to act differently." The council fell silent. Leora stepped forward. "Listen to him. We have survived before by following orders, but this requires something more. He sees what we cannot. We must trust him." The Queen studied both of them. Leora's unwavering faith in Ethan was clear, and it stirred a strange feeling within her. Humans were fragile, yet this one inspired trust not through power but through insight and courage. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. Implement your plan, but we will observe closely." Preparations began immediately. Ethan worked alongside Leora and the Elithran engineers to create traps and diversions. The planet's surface, usually peaceful and glowing with bioluminescent life, was transformed strategically. Certain crystal forests were made to emit blinding light at key moments. Rivers were redirected to block paths. Energy conduits were recalibrated to create temporary shields that could appear and vanish unpredictably. Every action had purpose. Leora learned quickly, absorbing every detail and offering suggestions. She admired Ethan's mind, his ability to see the battlefield not as lines and numbers but as a living, changing system. "Your world and mine, they are different," she said one evening as they worked through maps and holographic projections. "But somehow we think alike." Ethan smiled faintly. "Perhaps courage and survival are universal. Different forms, same instincts." The night before the main attack, Ethan and Leora walked along the palace terraces. Stars glittered overhead and the twin moons reflected softly on the crystal towers. There was tension in the air but also a quiet understanding between them. "I am afraid," Leora admitted softly, surprising herself. "Not for myself, but for everyone. I do not know if we can face what comes tomorrow." Ethan took her hand gently. "Fear is normal. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. You have it in you, and we face it together." She nodded, drawing strength from his words. For the first time, she realized that trust could be stronger than any weapon, and in that moment she understood why she had called him my human. He was more than an outsider. He was her partner, her ally, and someone she could rely on in ways no one else could understand. The following morning, the first wave of the enemy fleet appeared on the horizon. Their ships were larger than before, moving with calculated precision. Elithran defenses activated, energy shields shimmering and weapons firing in rhythmic pulses. Ethan observed carefully, issuing instructions that were clear, concise, and unexpected. Redirect energy from sectors 3 and 4 to the northern flank. Use the crystal ridge to block their sensors. Fire when the moon's reflection hits their hulls. The Elithran officers hesitated but followed his instructions. The results were immediate. The enemy ships faltered, unable to predict the sudden shifts in the defense grid. Leora watched Ethan in awe. He moved quickly, analyzing every move, adjusting plans in real time. Though his body was smaller and weaker, his mind worked faster than anyone else in the room. The battle escalated. Energy blasts lit the sky, and explosions shook the outer walls. Some Elithran ships were damaged. but Ethan's strategies minimized losses. Leora stayed close, coordinating communications and assisting with tactical adjustments. Together they created a rhythm, a harmony of thought and action that neither Illithrans nor humans had experienced before. Amid the chaos, a group of enemy ships attempted to bypass the main defenses and strike the palace directly. Ethan noticed their maneuver immediately. "They are targeting the heart of the palace," he shouted. "We must intercept before they reach the main gates." Without hesitation, he ran toward the defense console, dodging falling debris and sparks from damaged systems. Leora followed, shouting instructions to the palace staff. With a combination of quick thinking and the Illithrans' technology, they diverted the attackers into a trap. Crystalline towers emitted blinding pulses of light, disorienting the enemy pilots, while redirected rivers and energy barriers blocked their path. The enemy fleet struggled to recover, and for the first time their confidence wavered. Leora's pride swelled as she watched Ethan remain calm, guiding everyone with unwavering focus. He did not act recklessly. He calculated risks, anticipated moves, and adapted continuously. Illithran officers began to see him not as a human outsider, but as a strategist whose insights saved lives. In the middle of the battle, an enemy vessel broke through and headed straight for the palace's main energy core. Ethan did not hesitate. He ran toward the control chamber, his movements swift despite his human limits. Leora followed, determined not to let him face danger alone. Together, they rerouted energy shields just in time to absorb the impact. The vessel exploded harmlessly against the barriers and the palace core remained intact. The queen, observing from above, could hardly believe what she saw. Her daughter, small by human standards, was paired with a human who had saved the palace multiple times in a single day. She realized that strength was not only physical. Intelligence, courage, and adaptability were equally powerful. Her daughter's choice had proven wise, even if unconventional. By the end of the day, the enemy fleet retreated. Illithra had survived, and the bond between human and princess had been tested and proven. Leora ran to Ethan, her face glowing with relief and pride. "You were amazing," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Ethan shook his head with a tired smile. "I only did what I could. You guided me, Leora. Without your insight and trust, none of this would have worked." The palace staff and Illithran officers slowly realized the truth. Humans, though physically weaker, possessed qualities that their advanced technology could not replicate: creativity, courage, and the ability to see beyond conventional limits. Ethan had changed their understanding of strength and leadership. That night, as Illithra recovered from the battle, Leora and Ethan stood on the balcony once more. The stars sparkled above, reflecting the twin moons. The glow of the palace towers cast long shadows, and the river shimmered faintly with bioluminescent light. "You changed everything today," Leora said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Ethan looked at her. Exhaustion etched on his features, but determination in his eyes. "No, we changed it together. Courage is not mine alone, nor is victory. It belongs to everyone who fought with heart, no matter their size or species." Leora smiled, feeling the truth of his words. Humans may have been considered weak and fragile, but Ethan had shown that strength came in many forms. His courage and intelligence had turned the tide of battle, and in doing so, he had proven the value of humanity in a universe that had never truly understood them. The queen approached quietly, observing her daughter and the human. She spoke softly, not interrupting the moment between them. "Perhaps I have underestimated humans," she admitted. "Your courage, your insight, and your loyalty, they are remarkable. Perhaps it is time to reconsider what strength truly means." Leora looked at her mother with hope. "Ethan is not just a visitor. He is my human, and he has proven that humans can stand alongside us even in the most dangerous times." The queen nodded, still cautious but beginning to understand. The arrival of Ethan had challenged everything she believed, yet she could see that this small, fragile human possessed a spark that could inspire trust, courage, and even change. As the night deepened, Illithra slept under the twin moons, its people recovering from the attacks and preparing for whatever challenges might come next. Leora stayed close to Ethan, aware that their bond had been tested in ways few could imagine. Together they had faced danger, relied on trust, and discovered the extraordinary potential of a human mind and heart. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if acknowledging the arrival of something new in the galaxy. Humans had entered the story of Illithra, and the world would Days passed on Elithra, and the palace grew accustomed to the presence of the human, Ethan. Though he was small and fragile compared to the Elithrans, he moved with careful precision, observing, learning, and adapting. Leora stayed by his side, teaching him the intricacies of her world and learning in return about his. Their conversations were endless, ranging from the strange customs of Elithra to the harsh realities of life on Earth. Ethan was fascinated by the crystal forests outside the palace. Each tree glimmered as if made of liquid light, and the air was filled with a soft hum that resonated through the bones. He had never imagined such beauty existed in the universe, yet he did not let wonder stop him from studying, noticing patterns and asking questions. Leora admired how human curiosity seemed limitless, how every observation led to new insight. The palace healers continued to monitor his recovery. Though physically weaker than the Elithrans, Ethan showed resilience that surprised them. He tolerated treatments without complaint, often asking questions about their techniques and suggesting small changes that made procedures more efficient. Leora watched, amazed. Humans might lack strength, but they possessed something equally powerful: intelligence combined with determination. One afternoon, Leora took Ethan to the palace gardens. Strange flowers glowed softly under the sunlight, and rivers of liquid crystal flowed between the paths. Birds with iridescent feathers flew overhead, chirping in melodic patterns. Leora pointed out the differences in plant life, the purpose of each herb, and how Elithrans relied on these for medicine, food, and energy. Ethan listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Then he asked, "Have you considered using the energy from the crystal rivers to enhance the medical treatments? It could accelerate healing naturally." The court scientists were startled. Humans rarely questioned Elithran methods, yet here he was, suggesting improvements. Leora's eyes lit up. "That is brilliant," she said. "Why didn't anyone think of that before?" The healers implemented his idea cautiously. To everyone's surprise, it worked. Patients healed faster and energy consumption decreased. The palace staff began to realize that the human, though small and physically fragile, could see solutions in ways they could not. Leora's pride in him grew with every passing day. Despite his growing influence, Ethan never sought recognition. He focused on learning, helping, and understanding, never claiming ownership of his ideas. Leora admired his humility. In her world, rank and status often dictated respect, yet here was a human who earned it purely through merit and action. The queen, meanwhile, watched all this quietly. She still maintained her caution. Humans were unpredictable, and she could not ignore the possibility that this one might cause harm, intentionally or not. Still, she could not deny the way he inspired her daughter. Leora was brighter, calmer, and more confident when Ethan was nearby. The princess laughed more, questioned more, and seemed alive in ways that concerned the queen only slightly, but also intrigued her. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, the palace received urgent news. Scouts reported unusual activity near the outer border of Elithra's territory. Unknown ships were approaching at high speed. They were not Elithran, and their energy signatures suggested hostile intent. The queen immediately convened the council. Leora and Ethan were present. The human observed quietly, scanning maps and data projections. Unlike the Elithran officials, he did not panic. He asked questions, noted details others missed, and offered strategic possibilities. "The enemy is counting on surprise," Ethan said. "They expect you to react in predictable ways. But if we anticipate their moves and use unconventional tactics, we can control the situation." The council murmured among themselves. Some doubted his suggestions. Others were impressed by his reasoning. Leora looked at him with admiration. She trusted him completely, confident that his insight was genuine. The queen's voice finally cut through the discussion. "Explain yourself." Ethan turned to her respectfully. "I have studied conflict management on my world. We often survive against stronger forces by being adaptive, thinking ahead, and using our environment. I believe the same principles can help here, even with your advanced technology." The queen studied him for a long moment. His gaze was steady, his tone calm. She could see no deception, only intelligence and confidence. Reluctantly, she allowed him to assist in planning the defense. Over the next hours, Ethan worked with Elithran officers, suggesting modifications to patrol routes, reinforcing weak points, and devising ways to use the terrain to their advantage. Leora assisted him eagerly, learning quickly and adding her own insights. The team began to see the potential of combining human creativity with Elithran technology. Night fell, and the palace was illuminated by thousands of lights. Ethan remained focused, reviewing every detail. Leora sat beside him, her hand brushing his occasionally, a silent gesture of trust and connection. Despite the seriousness of the situation, they found moments of shared understanding and quiet comfort. Suddenly, alarms blared. The enemy ships had entered the system, moving rapidly toward the palace. Guards ran to stations. Elithran ships powered up and energy shields shimmered into place. The Queen, standing at the observation balcony, watched with a mixture of fear and hope. She had never expected a human to be involved in Elithra's defense. Yet here he was, calmly providing solutions when her people were overwhelmed. The first wave of attackers struck the outer defenses. Elithran weapons fired in precise bursts, but the enemy used unpredictable tactics, attempting to breach the perimeter. Ethan, studying the patterns, shouted instructions to the commanders. "Focus here! Redirect your energy to flank their approach. Use the terrain, they will not anticipate this move." The Elithran officers hesitated, then followed his directions. The result was immediate. The enemy fleet faltered, caught off guard by the unexpected strategy. Leora watched with pride as Ethan's ideas worked. His courage and insight had given them the advantage they needed. As the battle raged, Ethan noticed a weak point in the palace's defense grid. Without hesitation, he ran toward the vulnerable section, dodging hazards and alerting the guards. Leora followed him, unwilling to leave his side. Together, they reinforced the breach just in time to prevent the enemy from entering the palace. The Queen observed from above, her eyes narrowing as she realized the truth. This human, fragile as he appeared, possessed qualities her people often underestimated: adaptability, courage, and a sharp mind. He was not a threat. He was an ally, one capable of making a real difference. After hours of tense fighting, the enemy retreated. Elithra had survived, largely thanks to the combined efforts of its people and the unusual strategies suggested by the human. Leora ran to Ethan, her face glowing with relief and admiration. "You were incredible," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I never doubted you for a second." Ethan smiled, though exhausted. "I just did what I could." "You were brave too, Leora. You guided me when I needed it most." The Queen approached slowly, her expression unreadable. She studied Ethan carefully, weighing the risk and the benefit of his presence. Finally, she spoke. "You are different from what I expected. Perhaps humans are not as weak as my people believed. You have courage, insight, and loyalty. You have earned my respect and perhaps my trust." Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "I only wish to help." Leora smiled, feeling a sense of triumph. The bond between her and Ethan had grown stronger in the face of danger. She realized that humans, small as they might be, possessed qualities that her people could learn from. Strength was not always physical. Sometimes it was courage, adaptability, and the ability to think differently that mattered most. In the quiet aftermath, the palace began repairing damages and assessing the battle. Elithran citizens whispered among themselves about the human who had aided their princess. Some were skeptical, others fascinated. Leora, however, knew the truth. Ethan was extraordinary, and their connection was just the beginning of something that could change not only Elithra, but the way different worlds understood each other. As the night deepened, Ethan and Leora stood together once more on the balcony, looking at the stars. The battle had ended, but the galaxy was vast and there were countless challenges ahead. Leora placed her hand gently on Ethan's arm. "You've changed everything," she said softly, "not just for me, but for my people." Ethan looked at her, a small smile on his lips. "Then we will face the rest together." The Queen observed silently from her chambers, reflecting on the events of the day. She understood now that humans were more than myths. They were small but formidable, fragile yet resilient, and capable of inspiring loyalty and courage beyond expectation. Her daughter's choice had proven wise, even if it defied tradition. And so Elithra slept under the twin moons, a world forever altered by the arrival of a single human. Leora remained by Ethan's side, her trust unwavering, knowing that the days ahead would be filled with discovery, challenge, and perhaps a bond that transcended species and stars. Humanity had arrived in a place that had never seen them before, and the impact of their presence had only just begun. The planet of Elithra was unlike any world humans had ever known. Towering crystal towers rose above green valleys that sparkled under two suns. Rivers glowed faintly with bioluminescent algae, and strange floating creatures moved gracefully through the air. From afar it seemed peaceful, almost like a paradise, but the palace, built from silvered stone and light-reflecting crystal, pulsed with tension. Inside, Queen Amara walked along the grand halls, her robes whispering against the polished floors. She was calm, but her mind was sharp and alert, as always. Elithra had never faced a human before. Humans were spoken of in distant myths, small, fragile beings, unpredictable and clever, yet unsuited for the powerful technologies of her people. Still, there had been signs. Unusual energy readings had been detected at the edge of their system, far beyond the usual patrol zones. The Queen had prepared for a visitor, but nothing had fully prepared her for what was about to happen. Princess Leora, her daughter, was already at the observation balcony overlooking the palace grounds. Her hair shimmered with a silver sheen, catching the light from the twin suns. Her eyes, a striking shade of violet, scanned the horizon with curiosity. Unlike most of the court, she did not feel fear at the unknown. Rather, she felt a spark of excitement whenever something new entered their lives. It started with a sudden flash in the sky. A streak of fire moved across the atmosphere, crashing far beyond the palace walls. Guards rushed to the scene, their sleek armor glinting under the sun while palace officials activated security protocols. Leora's gaze followed the burning object and her heart leapt. She had always wondered if she would witness something extraordinary, and now it was happening. When the smoke cleared, a small vessel lay half buried in the crystal sands. It was unlike any Elithran craft, rough and battered, with panels charred from atmospheric friction. From within, a figure struggled to emerge. The human's physical form was frail compared to Elithran's, their skin soft and unarmored, their movements slower yet surprisingly determined. Leora ran to the edge of the balcony, her breath catching as she saw him. His clothes were torn, his face smudged with dust, but his eyes shone with alert intelligence. Even injured, he moved with purpose. Guards approached, weapons raised, ready to act, but Leora waved them back. "Wait," she called, her voice steady but firm. "Do not harm him. He is different." The Queen entered the room at that moment, her presence commanding silence. She observed the human with careful eyes. "Who is that?" she asked. Leora did not hesitate. Her gaze was fixed on the human struggling to his feet. "My human," she replied. The word startled everyone in the room. Whispered conversations rippled through the court as people tried to understand what had just been said. The Queen's brow furrowed. "My human?" she repeated, her tone calm but curious. "Yes," Leora said. "He is remarkable. I can feel it." The Queen considered her daughter's words. Elithrans rarely trusted outsiders and certainly never humans. Yet something about the way Leora spoke, the certainty in her eyes, made the Queen pause. She decided to observe first, to see what this human was truly capable of. The guards carefully escorted the injured human into the palace. He stumbled but remained upright, using sheer willpower to stay on his feet. Leora descended to meet him, moving with a grace that matched her concern. She knelt slightly to offer her hand. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked. The human, who introduced himself as Ethan, nodded. I will recover," he said. His voice was steady, tinged with exhaustion but also confidence. It was strange for the court to hear such a tone, so different from the usual fear or submission that outsiders showed. Leora guided him to the medical chambers. Elithran healers skilled in energy-based medicine examined him. To everyone's surprise, he endured the treatments without complaint, enduring the alien procedures that would have terrified most humans. While he rested, Leora watched over him. She noticed details that no one else seemed to see, the way he observed the room, taking in every tool, every device, every movement, and the way he adjusted quickly to the strange environment. There was intelligence there, yes, but also courage, a spark she had never seen in any other being. Over the next few days, Ethan slowly regained his strength. He learned to move more comfortably in the palace, to interact with the Elithran systems, and even to understand their language. His progress was astonishing, and the palace staff began to see what Leora already knew. This human was not ordinary. The Queen remained cautious. She questioned him privately, testing his knowledge, his intentions, and his temperament. Ethan spoke honestly, without deception or fear. He admitted his purpose was exploration, that he had stumbled upon Elithra accidentally and that he meant no harm. But he also showed creativity, an ability to think in ways that the Elithrans had never considered. He suggested ideas for repairing palace systems more efficiently, and even noticed structural weaknesses in the outer defenses. The Queen was intrigued. Humans were fragile, yes, but fragile did not mean weak. Strength came in many forms, and perhaps these creatures had abilities her people had never fully understood. Still, she maintained her caution. She would not allow him to endanger her daughter or her people. Meanwhile, Leora spent her days with Ethan, learning about Earth, about humans, and about the small yet resilient world he had come from. She asked questions endlessly, fascinated by stories of a planet where survival required cunning, adaptability, and unyielding determination. Ethan, in turn, asked about Elithra, its history, its culture, and its unique ways of thinking. He admired the grace of the Elithran people, but he never bowed blindly. Instead, he showed respect through understanding, through careful observation, and through actions that spoke louder than words. Word of the humans' presence spread through the city. Some whispered doubts, worried that a human could disrupt the delicate balance of their society. Others were curious, hoping to see if the stories about humans were true. Leora, however, cared little for rumors. She saw the truth in Ethan's actions, the courage in his eyes, and the gentle intelligence that guided him. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in brilliant hues of violet and gold, Leora and Ethan stood together on the balcony. The wind played with her hair, and the faint glow of the rivers below illuminated their faces. "You are different from what I imagined humans to be," Leora said softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "And I never imagined a world like this or someone like you showing me kindness without hesitation." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the distant mountains shimmer under the fading light. Leora realized that her connection to him was more than curiosity. It was a recognition of something rare and extraordinary. Courage, resilience, and understanding had brought him here, and somehow they had found her as well. The Queen, observing from a distance, continued to watch carefully. She could not yet decide whether to fully trust him, but she could see the change in her daughter. Leora had grown brighter, more confident, more thoughtful. There was a bond forming that neither human nor alien could fully explain, yet it was undeniable. As night fell, the palace prepared for the arrival of more delegates from nearby star systems. Elithra was a hub of diplomacy, and the presence of a human, small and fragile by comparison, would certainly draw attention. Some might see him as weak, others might underestimate him, but Leora knew the truth. He was not merely a visitor. He was someone extraordinary, someone whose strength would reveal itself in ways the galaxy had never imagined. And so, the first part of this story closed with a quiet understanding between princess and human. Outside, the crystal towers glimmered in the night, casting long shadows across the land. Somewhere in the distance, strange creatures flew past, oblivious to the events unfolding in the palace. Inside, a princess watched over a human who had captured her curiosity, her admiration, and perhaps in time her heart. The Queen's voice echoed faintly in the halls as she moved through the chambers, repeating Leora's words quietly to herself. My human. My human." She could not yet grasp what it truly meant, but she sensed that the arrival of this small, fragile being would change everything about Elithra, its people, its rules, and even its queen. The galaxy was about to witness the unexpected rise of humanity in a way no one could have predicted, and it all began with a single, injured human who had fallen from the stars and into the heart of a princess. The morning after the retreat of the enemy fleet, Elithra was alive with activity. Engineers, soldiers, and healers moved through the palace and city, repairing damaged systems and tending to those injured in the battle. The crystal towers glimmered in the twin suns' light, reflecting the resilience of a people who refused to be defeated. Yet beneath the surface, a tension lingered. The enemy had retreated, but their intent was clear. They would return, and their next attack would be stronger. Ethan moved through the palace corridors, observing the repairs and offering suggestions. Though he was human, fragile compared to the Elithrans, he moved with quiet authority, his mind calculating and precise. He suggested ways to reinforce the outer defenses, optimize energy shields, and strengthen communication networks. Leora followed closely, eager to learn and to contribute. Together they worked tirelessly, driven by a sense of urgency and purpose. The Queen watched silently from her chambers. Her initial skepticism had begun to fade as she observed Ethan's capabilities. She had witnessed his intelligence, courage, and adaptability, but there was something more that intrigued her, the way he inspired those around him. Soldiers followed his instructions with renewed confidence, and even the council began to trust his judgment. Humans were small, fragile creatures, yet this one had proven that strength could take many forms. Later in the day, scouts returned with alarming news. A massive enemy fleet was entering the system, larger and more heavily armed than the first. They were not here to retreat, they were here to conquer. The palace erupted with activity as Elethran leaders convened to strategize. Ethan stood at the center of the planning chamber, analyzing star charts, energy readings, and fleet formations. "They are coming in waves," Ethan said calmly, pointing at the projections. "They expect us to respond conventionally. If we follow their pattern, we will lose. But if we can anticipate the timing of their attacks and exploit their formation, we can create an opening for a decisive counterstrike." One of the Elethran officers frowned. "And what if we miscalculate?" "You are human. Your species is not adapted to the stresses of battle like ours. How can we trust your judgment?" Ethan met the officer's gaze steadily. "I rely on observation and logic, not physical strength. I do not act alone, I work with those who know this world. Together we can create strategies that neither species could accomplish alone." Leora nodded in agreement. "Trust him. I have seen his mind at work, and it has saved lives. We must act, not hesitate." The Queen, listening quietly, allowed the plan to proceed. She still held reservations, but the bond between her daughter and Ethan was evident. Leora's faith in him was unwavering, and that was enough for now. As the enemy fleet approached, Elithra's defenses were ready. Energy shields shimmered along the outer perimeter, and fleet ships moved into position. Ethan directed the deployment of forces with precision, adjusting in real time as enemy vessels shifted and adapted. Leora communicated between divisions, ensuring that instructions were clear and coordinated. The battle began with sudden intensity. Energy blasts lit the sky, and explosions shook the palace grounds. The enemy fleet used unpredictable tactics, testing every defense line. Yet Ethan's foresight proved invaluable. He anticipated their moves, redirected forces, and exploited weaknesses that others could not see. Leora's admiration grew with each maneuver. At one point, a group of heavily armed enemy ships targeted the palace's main energy core. The Elethran officers hesitated, unsure how to respond. Ethan acted immediately. "We cannot let them reach the core," he said. "Use the crystal spires to create a temporary barrier. Redirect the river energy to reinforce the shields. Timing is critical. Act now." Leora ran alongside him, issuing orders and coordinating energy flow. Together they activated the barriers just in time. The enemy ships struck the defenses, but the palace remained intact. Elethran officers began to see the human not as a weak outsider, but as a strategist whose insight saved lives. As the battle continued, the enemy deployed specialized units designed to target key personnel. One ship broke through near the command chamber, and guards scrambled to intercept it. Ethan noticed the approach immediately. "They are coming for us!" he shouted. "We must evacuate and neutralize them simultaneously." Leora grabbed his hand. "We face it together," she said firmly. They moved through the chamber, directing forces and coordinating counterattacks. Using the palace's environment strategically, they created diversions and traps. The enemy units were caught off guard, and Elithra's forces regained control. The coordination between human and Elethran proved decisive. Meanwhile, the Queen observed from the central balcony. Her heart pounded with both fear and awe. She had seen battles before, but never one fought with such precision and trust between two species. Ethan's courage was clear. He did not act recklessly, yet he placed himself in danger when it mattered most. Leora's determination matched his, and together they had become a force that inspired everyone around them. Hours passed, and the tide of battle began to turn. The enemy fleet, unable to adapt to the unconventional strategies and the Elethran human coordination, started to falter. Ships retreated, Energy lines failed and their formation broke apart. Elithra had survived, yet the effort had taken a toll on both defenders and invaders. After the last wave of the enemy fleet retreated, silence fell over the palace grounds. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of energy discharges. Soldiers cheered, healers tended to the wounded, and the Elithran council began assessing the damage. Leora ran to Ethan, her face glowing with relief and pride. "You were incredible," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I never doubted you for a second." Ethan shook his head with a tired smile. "I only did what I could. You guided me, Leora. Without your insight and trust, none of this would have worked." The Queen approached slowly, her expression thoughtful. "I underestimated humans," she admitted quietly. "Your courage, insight, and loyalty, they are remarkable. You have changed my perception and perhaps the perception of my people as well." Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wish to help and to learn. I did not come here to prove strength, only to survive and contribute where I could." Leora took his hand gently. "You have done more than survive. You have shown us that courage and intelligence can match power and technology. You have proven that humans are capable of more than we ever imagined." The Queen studied them, a faint smile forming. She realized that her daughter's trust in Ethan had been wise. Humans, though fragile in body, possessed qualities that Elithrans could not fully comprehend: creativity, adaptability, and courage. These were strengths that no weapon or technology could replace. That night, Leora and Ethan stood together on the palace balcony, overlooking the glowing rivers and crystal towers. The twin moons reflected softly on the landscape, casting long shadows across the land. "The battle is over, but the war is not," Ethan said quietly. "They will return and we must be ready, but we have shown that we can face them, together." Leora nodded, feeling a sense of certainty. "No matter what comes, we face it together. You are my human, and I trust you completely." Ethan looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. "And I will not let you down, Leora. We will face the challenges ahead side by side." The Queen watched from her chambers, reflecting on the events of the day. She had learned something important. Strength was not always physical. Courage, intelligence, and the ability to inspire others could turn the tide of battle in ways that brute force never could. Her daughter had chosen wisely, and the presence of this human had changed everything for Elithra. As the palace settled into the quiet of night, the bond between human and princess had been tested and strengthened. They had faced overwhelming odds, relied on each other's strengths, and discovered that unity and trust could overcome even the most formidable threats. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if acknowledging the courage of one small human who had made a difference in a world far from his own. Elithra had survived, but more importantly, it had learned that greatness could come in unexpected forms. And at the center of it all were two beings from different worlds standing together, ready to face whatever the universe would throw at them next. The days following the second battle were filled with recovery and reflection. Elithra, though scarred by the attacks, had endured. Repairs were underway, and citizens spoke in hushed, excited tones about the human who had changed the course of their world. Leora moved through the palace with purpose, overseeing reconstruction efforts and assisting Ethan as he helped integrate new defensive strategies. Their partnership had become inseparable, a combination of human ingenuity and Elithran knowledge that others could only admire. The Queen watched carefully. Her daughter's faith in Ethan had never wavered, yet the Queen herself had struggled with the presence of a human so central to her people's defense. Now, however, she could see that he was not a threat. He was a bridge, between species, between ideas, and between hearts. The trust he had earned went beyond merit. It had become a force that inspired courage and unity. Ethan, for his part, had grown into his role with quiet determination. He moved among the Elithrans, learning their ways, understanding their technology, and offering practical solutions. His humility and intelligence won over even the most skeptical officers. Humans, small and fragile as they were, possessed something that Elithrans had long underestimated: the ability to adapt, to think differently, and to inspire others. One morning, Leora brought him to the palace observation deck. The twin suns shone over the crystal forests, and the rivers reflected light like molten gold. "They may return," she said softly, "and we must be ready. But I trust you, Ethan. I know you will help us see what others cannot." Ethan looked at her, admiration and resolve in his eyes. "We face challenges together, and whatever comes, we adapt and overcome." A sudden alert interrupted their conversation. Scouts reported a third wave of enemy ships entering the system, larger and more sophisticated than ever before. They had learned from their previous failures and were coming prepared to conquer Elithra. The palace erupted into action. Defense teams mobilized, and Ethan immediately began analyzing the data. Leora assisted, coordinating communications between divisions. "They are counting on us to repeat our last strategies," Ethan said, pointing at the holographic display. "We cannot be predictable. We must create a plan that uses every advantage we have, including the unexpected." The Queen entered the chamber, her presence commanding attention. "Explain yourself," she demanded. "We have already fought twice. How can a human guide the defense of Elithra against a fleet of this scale?" Ethan responded calmly, meeting her gaze. "Your Majesty, I rely on observation, logic, and adaptability. I do not act alone. Together with Leora and your forces, we can anticipate and counter their moves. Strength is not only in the body. Strategy and foresight can win battles that brute force cannot." The Queen studied him carefully, then nodded. "Very well. You may proceed, but I will observe closely." Preparations began immediately. Ethan directed the placement of energy barriers, strategically positioning ships and defense units to create layers of traps and ambush points. He used the crystal forests and rivers to manipulate the battlefield, creating blinding light pulses and energy diversions. Leora worked beside him, ensuring every instruction reached its intended target. Soldiers began to trust the human completely, relying on his insights to make split-second decisions. The first wave of enemy ships attacked, and Ethan's strategies worked perfectly. Their formations were disrupted by the unexpected use of the terrain, and Elithran defenses adapted in real time. Leora moved swiftly, coordinating fire teams and ensuring shields remained intact. For the first time, the Elithran officers witnessed a human, not just surviving but excelling in the heat of battle. As the battle escalated, the enemy deployed a specialized unit designed to infiltrate the palace itself. Ethan immediately noticed the maneuver. "They are targeting the command center," he shouted. "We cannot allow them to breach our heart. Divert energy to the northern corridor and activate the crystal pulse barriers." Leora and Ethan moved quickly, their actions synchronized. Guards were redirected, energy barriers activated, and the enemy unit was intercepted just outside the palace gates. The palace remained secure and the enemy's morale began to falter. Hours passed and the enemy fleet struggled to adapt to the unconventional tactics. Ethan observed carefully, anticipating their moves and adjusting strategies on the fly. Leora followed, relaying orders and ensuring that the entire defense network functioned seamlessly. Together, they had become a force that was greater than the sum of its parts. During a brief pause in the battle, Ethan noticed a pattern in the enemy's approach. "They are trying to overwhelm us by creating multiple points of attack," he said. "If we can isolate their leaders, we can disrupt their chain of command and force a retreat." The Elithran commanders hesitated. "How do we reach them?" "Their ships are protected and heavily armed," Ethan smiled faintly. "We use their own assumptions against them. They expect predictable retaliation. We strike from unexpected angles using the terrain and timing to our advantage. We can disable their leaders without risking unnecessary losses." The plan was executed with precision. Small strike teams, guided by Ethan's insights, targeted the enemy leaders while the main forces held defensive positions. The enemy fleet began to falter, confusion spreading through their ranks. Energy lines failed, formations collapsed, and ships were forced into retreat. Elithra had survived the greatest threat it had ever faced. When the last enemy vessel fled, silence fell over the palace. Exhausted soldiers and officers began to tend to the wounded, while engineers repaired damages. Leora ran to Ethan, her face glowing with relief and pride. "You were amazing," she said, tears in her eyes. "I never doubted you for a second." Ethan shook his head, smiling faintly. "I only did what I could. You guided me, Leora. Without your trust and insight, none of this would have worked." The Queen approached slowly, observing the human who had played such a critical role in Elithra's survival. She spoke softly, a hint of admiration in her voice. "I underestimated humans," she admitted. "Your courage, intelligence, and loyalty are remarkable. You have changed my perception and perhaps the perception of my people as well." Leora took Ethan's hand gently. You have shown us that strength comes in many forms. You have proven that humans, though physically fragile, possess courage, creativity, and the ability to inspire others. You are not just a visitor, Ethan. You are my human and the heart of our victory. The Queen studied them, a faint smile forming on her lips. Perhaps I was wrong to doubt your presence here. You have earned not only my respect, but the respect of Elithra itself. As night fell over the palace, the city glimmered under the twin moons. Crystalline rivers reflected light across the towers, and the air was filled with a sense of relief and renewal. Leora and Ethan stood together on the balcony, looking at the stars and reflecting on the trials they had faced. The battles are over, at least for now, Ethan said quietly. But we must remain vigilant. There are always challenges ahead, but we have proven that together, we can face anything. Leora smiled, squeezing his hand. No matter what comes, we face it together. You are my human, and I trust you completely. The Queen watched from her chambers, understanding that this human had changed not just her daughter, but her entire perception of what it meant to be strong. Strength was not only physical, it was courage, intelligence, and the ability to inspire and unite. Ethan had brought that to Elithra, and the kingdom would be forever changed. In the days that followed, Elithra celebrated its survival and the courage of its defenders. Ethan continued to work alongside Leora, integrating human ingenuity with Elithran knowledge. Citizens spoke of the human hero with admiration, and even the most skeptical officers began to acknowledge the value of his insights. Leora and Ethan spent quiet moments together, reflecting on the journey they had shared. They had faced overwhelming odds, relied on each other's strengths, and discovered that unity and trust could overcome even the greatest challenges. Their bond had been tested and proven, and it had grown stronger with every obstacle. The Queen approached one evening, standing silently behind them as they observed the glowing city. You have done more than survive, she said softly. You have shown us that greatness can come in unexpected forms. Your courage, human, has inspired a kingdom. Ethan bowed respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wished to help, to learn, and to stand by those who trusted me. I never imagined I could have such an impact. Leora placed her hand on his arm, smiling. You have more than impact, you have changed hearts, including mine. You are my human, and I cannot imagine facing the future without you by my side. The Queen watched them, realizing that this small human had become a symbol of hope, courage, and unity. Elithra had faced destruction and survived, not only because of technology or strength, but because of trust, intelligence, and the bravery of a human who refused to be underestimated. As the night deepened, Elithra slept peacefully under the twin moons. The palace glimmered softly, and the rivers of crystal reflected the light like molten gold. Humans had entered the story of this distant world, and their presence had left a mark that would endure. Leora and Ethan stood together, ready to face whatever the universe might bring, their bond unbreakable and their courage unwavering.